Hi, welcome to a new episode of the Commodity Super Cycle. Today with a copper bull, with a special guest, it's Gianni. He is sitting in Croatia, Zagreb right now. Gianni, nice having you on my show.
Good morning, and I look forward to discussing really what's going on in global energy so it makes sense. Why? Why are some things going to be winners and why are some things going to be losers?
And that's why you're here. Please make a brief introduction of yourself. Who are you?
I've studied energy for 25 years. I've wrote a book. I've done lots of public speaking, and I've had this passion to be able to explain in my way this, what is now called the green revolution or energy transition. But this has already been happening since years. It's just now becoming commercially viable.
Yeah.
I have spoken for insurance companies, technology companies, automotive industry, all over the world. That's now went into a bit of a pause, but what we're going to talk about today is this 25 years of collective expertise, I would say, on energy and oil and gas, and of course the automotive industry, and all these things work together. And now I will say there is an undeniable direction that global energy has taken, and you as an investor must follow the winners and just be cautious of what I think are going to be the losers.
Yeah, and you're one of the biggest copper bulls I've ever seen, and I promised the audience already after the interview you will have FOMO to invest into copper and copper stocks, but we talk about this later. So so you're calling a big super cycle, actually a big bull market in metals, in copper, the biggest in history actually. So you're even expecting a copper mania. So why is that? Is copper the new gold or the new Bitcoin?
Well, there is no replacement for copper. When you're talking about renewable energy, it's electricity. The greener and cleaner that we create, transfer, and utilize energy, the more that is demanded of copper. There is one substitute, it's aluminum, but they're the only two. And it's because of this, and if you understand the way commodities have grown over the past 100 years, we've already done this super investment into looking for more copper and trying to exploit more copper. And now we come to the point where geologically very rare, it only happens in a few countries. And unlike the oil and gas industry, where they reinvented the wheel, the ability to extract more oil from even old formations, with copper, there's simply no copper in the rock. The concentration is very low.
Yeah.
There's only one remedy for this, Mark. The engineers can do this. We can exploit the resources we found this past 20, 30, 40 years. And it's only possible with a higher copper price, which is why I've been saying very vocally, I was on Bloomberg. If I just share with you one very important
please
here,
go for it.
This really points out what people need to be looking at here. So I've done media all over the world. I've already talked about that. I don't just say this. I've been to Houston or Calgary. I can talk about oil and gas with a very well-versed analyst. I can also talk about the mining industry and the automotive industry because I have this experience. And if I was the guy on Bloomberg, that because of these reasons, because the price must be higher for copper, the demand will be there. And look what has happened.
Wow.
When I was on Bloomberg in 2016, now oil should be $150 a barrel if it followed this 40 years or 50 years pattern. I do not see an environment where oil will be $150 a barrel unless you give me politics. With very extreme politics in a few places, it can be there for a short time, but not the long term. What I'm trying to tell you is that for the next 20 years, the copper price is going to be stronger for longer. Because
but Gianni, may I interrupt you for a second? One question. We see copper right now at an all-time high. It never has been higher than right now. So do you believe it's a good time to invest now? Will we see a rising price in the future or a correction?
It's a very good time to invest. Why? We have not seen the mania in the copper shares.
Okay.
The copper price has done its job. High. It's right now at $4.60, $10,000 per ton. But if you look at not macro, because this has had a big move, but if you go down one level lower, these shares are trading at levels. Copper was $6 a ton, $3 per pound. So there certainly has not been a mania, and there certainly is. Just compared to this, when going to 2011, when the red line, when the copper price was at the all-time high before, the shares that I look at would be 3 and 4 and 5 times more valuable per share, which tells you have a lot of opportunity. And of course, Copper Bank is one such company that I'm very selfishly, I'm the largest shareholder, but I can always talk about that experience. We'll do that later on.
Yeah. I wrote in my new book actually that we have a lack of new copper deposits. So basically, we're not finding enough new copper. And so do you see in the future a supply shock of copper, and this will put the price even in other attitude?
Well, we found copper, but low grade elevation in politically unstable places with no infrastructure, typically no water, no workforce around, and with this added ESG issues.
Yeah.
People will sympathize with the 1970s, the oil shock, the first time the oil price went crazy, and we relied on Middle East oil. And we have had this understanding, everyone, doesn't matter, you could be a grandmother in Bayern and she would understand this. But we rely more in copper, I'm speaking, with Peru and Chile.
Yeah.
So 40% of primary copper comes from these two countries, and much of the future expansion will or should come from there as well. But the problem we have now is with the election instability that we saw in Peru, and now you have this drafting of a new constitution in Chile, talking about having a new royalty, talking about increasing taxes. Yeah. And in Peru, they're talking about simply nationalizing many
socialists. Always the same. Always the same. Socialism is trendy again.
Not going to be easy. So what the miners, the companies, the very few companies that produce copper, because also not like oil and gas, it's about 20 public listed companies that produce more than 50% of global copper. They don't like instability. And the board of directors of these companies are now probably saying, let's wait until we spend 4, 5, or 6 billion in Peru or Ecuador or Chile. And maybe they want to look at the more safe places like Australia, Arizona, Nevada, British Columbia, and these other more safe jurisdictions.
Yeah. So, okay. So to summarize, you are super bullish on copper, as you expect on one side a supply shock, and on the other side rising demand because of the green revolution, ESG, and so on.
Yeah, but how much demand are we talking about? So I have a great chart on oil demand, which segues into copper. So there was always an argument the last sort of 6-7 years when I was making the case for the lack of growth in oil demand. And depending on who you asked, the demand of oil, we're looking at oil here, would keep climbing. And this is looking towards into the future. And they said, well, where will we be? Depending on how optimistic or how pessimistic you were on electric vehicles and governmental policy to go away from pollution, the oil demand was a different story in 20 years. But what did COVID do? COVID basically took oil demand here. 70 million barrel a day in 1 year. And it was a very ugly scenario. So I look at the oil business like tobacco. It's actually going to be a very good business for some people. So even when oil demand comes like this, I believe that there's going to be a margin. It's going to be a good business, and you do not want to own a very poor located, a very low quality, a very high taxed, very infrastructure poor oil barrel. I'm talking about Canada. This would be a difficult place to have oil reserves, whereas Saudi Arabia or maybe Russia would be a good place to have oil reserves. But at the end of the day, it's no longer a growth industry. Whereas, to answer your question the long way, with copper, the demand for copper in absolute terms doubles.
Okay.
This is a fantastic prognostication. So in this same timeline you're looking at here, in the next 20 years, the growth rate, CAGR growth rate for copper, assuming we have this adoption and governments are really going to do what they say they're going to do, we will see growth rate for copper year after year for the next 20 years of about 5%.
Wow.
Which is a fantastic growth rate.
Yeah.
So where will this copper come from? It's going to come from the ability for engineers to make an economic reserve out of what is today uneconomic. And that is only possible with what I believe is going to be yet higher copper prices. It's an insurance policy. If they want this green energy dreams to come true, we know the demand of copper will double. And look at what Royal Dutch Shell is telling their investors.
Yeah.
They will become the world's largest producer of electricity by the year 2035. Today, only 20% of final energy usage is electricity. By 2040, it will be 50%. You don't have to get out your pencil, your paper, your calculator. That biggest beneficiary is going to be copper. You at least want to follow what is going on in the few names and those few projects in copper, because fortunes are yet to be made in this speculation, this trade, this trend.
So what's the best way for the viewer to invest in copper? What's your top stock pick?
You want to have optionality. You want to have commodity optionality, obviously. We're talking about a good quality copper project.
Yeah.
You want to have land optionality. So if I put the analogy to oil, if you and me as a family drilled for oil in Texas, but we found oil, but it's uneconomic. What shall you do with this property? You cap it, you do nothing. You wait, oil price goes higher, and then you have optionality because now you have a net present value. You can do the same with copper. That's exactly what we did with Copper Bank. We bought high quality, well-located copper development projects in the United States that previous operators spent $120 million. And we now have a market valuation of $40 million. So if you look at the net present value at $6,000 per ton copper, these projects are not economic. But if you look at 8,000 a ton or 10,000 a ton, there is a net present value that goes well in excess of $2 billion US. So if we can capture a portion of that, 10%, let's say, which I believe we will, that's where our market value will eventually catch up to that. In the short term, like Ben Graham used to teach us, markets are voting machines. Investors do erratic things. Commodities takes a little bit longer time, but in the long run, Mark, they are always a weighing machine. And there is a customer for our projects. We are investors, and we will be happy partners and sellers of this portfolio. And the best part of this optionality play, because we own all the real estate with no debt, keine Schulden, as you say in Germany.
Yeah,
it's a time expiry that never happens. We own the land. We just wait patiently. And I believe there is a 10-bagger from where we're trading now in a very patient, very real estate-based investment in copper in land. The work has already been done. We are now with extreme interest in what we are doing. And I think people can sleep well at night because you never wake up because of a debt problem or what have you.
Yeah.
What we do need is a higher copper price. So Copper Bank, or a land optionality play in copper, in my opinion, is the other way, other than owning simply like Freeport-McMoRan. You want to own something that's not yet in production because it has huge, as you say in German, Hebel. Leverage.
Yeah. So what's your price target for copper at the end of the cycle?
Well, I follow what the engineers tell me. So I look at what a copper mining engineer requires, because we know where these projects are located. I have the list here. I will share you the list. So this is the list of projects that are currently being built by major mining companies. Peru, Chile, and Kazakhstan, Russia at the margin. And what they require, these are financed, is look down here, it'll give us 3 million tons of production for a $65 billion capex. That tells you they need $2 billion of investment for each 100,000 tons of potential metal yield. Now, if you go to the projects that have not yet been built, and this is the problem for the industry, these are the projects that between 2025 and 2032 could be built. Peru, Chile, and other politically not as stable countries. Now we need, if you look at the numbers here, 2.5 billion for each 100,000 tons of metal yield. These projects are not approved. So to answer your question the longer way around, what the engineers are telling me, if you want to make the resources, economic reserves, to be built by these major mining companies, even when we don't know here, what will the tax rate in the future be? Higher. What will the royalties be?
Higher.
Be higher. Is there a future election risk? You must pay for all these things. Water, workforce. They need, based on what we found, you will see copper go between $12,000 and $15,000 a ton, or you will not have the copper. It's not the will, Mark. Got lots of that. It's the money.
Okay.
If they do not have the economic incentive, they will not get the ability to finance these projects. So I am here to tell you, this is a when, not if, because we know that these green energy things are happening. The demand of copper, okay, if it doesn't double, it's going up much higher. The demand will be there. Otherwise, they're going to have to do this with aluminum. Very inefficient. You will see copper in this cycle, $12,000 to $15,000 a ton. When you see that, you will have a mania. I will come back on your show and we will look at some of the claims that I've made.
Definitely.
People who are following these trends, I think they're in for a very, very fun ride.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Yeah. You definitely kicked in the FOMO with me. So let's talk about other metals. Are you excited about any other commodities, perhaps space metals, rare earth, silver?
I'm extremely excited about lithium. The lithium market is going to climb, and I've got a pretty good chart on that. So this graphic here, which was done by Wood Mackenzie, and they're talking about the 5 important electric metals. Now, copper and aluminum we talked about, and the market will grow. This is where I said it doubles. You can see it's going to grow by 23 million tons. Currently, the market's 25. Nickel, but the lithium market is going to grow by 1,000%. A lot. Where will the lithium come from? It's going to come from different types of formations. It's going to come now from lithium brine water. Where you have even in Germany the potential for this, where you take this salty or brine reservoir under the ground, lake, if you will, and they're able to take this low concentrations of lithium and concentrate it to be a battery grade lithium. Now, why not the other things? There are so many people working on the chemistry of new batteries. And I can tell you the chemistry is going to change. There are many thousands of brilliant people and many hundreds of companies working on this. But you will always have copper and you will always have a lithium. You can argue the other ones. And you know what? I don't care. It's like an old saying. It's an old saying. He says, never approach a goat from the front, a horse from the back, or a fool from any side. If a commodity does not have overwhelmingly positive economics in every direction you look, I am less interested in that commodity. And I believe cobalt has problems because we just simply don't have enough geologically available cobalt. So they are working very hard to remove this. And if you look at the rare earth elements, we need to start looking at the individual ones. I like scandium. Scandium is a very special metal. It is a rare earth, but where do we use scandium? We put scandium into aluminum. 0.5% to 1%, and it turns aluminum into super aluminum. It makes it stronger so that it can be used instead of steel. They can use this aluminum. They can then weld it together rather than bolting it. It can be used in aviation. It can be used throughout industry because it's one of the easy ways to save energy. Make heavy things very light. Then they use less energy. So Scandium is a market that'll grow, in my opinion, by 2,000% in the next 15 years. That's an exciting market to follow, and I do follow it.
Cool. Okay, how can you invest in Scandium? Is there a company?
Scandium's a very thin market. There are a few companies. People have to be very careful because they're probably illiquid. I'm always speaking what my investments, so people have to understand that. I am conflicted, but I own a deposit in Quebec that has very good metallurgy, and Quebec is good because what does Quebec have? A large aluminum industry. So to have the highest quality, highest grade Scandium deposit, in my opinion, close by, in the medium term, I see those two things marrying each other. The company that owns it is called Imperial Mining Group. People can do their own due diligence, and you put a small portion of your depot or your portfolio in something like this, because if it works, it's going to work really well. But that's how I have exposure to Scandium.
Sure. Okay, nice tip, Gianni. Let's have some real talk about the green revolution. Nikola Tesla was born as you in Croatia. So what would have been his thoughts on the green revolution? Is this really a green revolution, or is it just a marketing gag from the politicians? Are electric cars the solution? So what's your take on this?
Are they the solution? I think Nikola Tesla would have been extremely important right now. Fortunately, we don't have Nikola Tesla. But we remember when there's a funny story here, but with Croatians, because the kickoff of the oil industry was discovering oil under pressure in Spindletop, Texas. It was discovered on January 10th, 1901. And it was an engineer who was born in Split, Croatia in 1855. He went to the Graz Polytechnic, where everyone who was enlightened in the Austro-Hungarian Empire went. He ended up in the northern United States, and they sent him to Texas. And there was a promoter called Potillo Higgins, and he and Anthony Lucas, he changed his name to Anton Lucic was his original Croatian name, and they discovered oil under pressure, and it changed the world. Because what happened at exactly that time? The internal combustion engine. And it was why, because we had so much oil, that automotive industry and of course airplanes and everything else that you know became running off that fuel source. But where does Nikola Tesla come into this? He was born in 1856 in Gospic, Croatia. He went to the Graz Polytechnic, where everyone in the Austro-Hungarian Empire who was enlightened went. Went to Paris, came to America to work for Thomas Edison, and he told him, "You're doing it the wrong way. It's AC. With AC, we can transfer electricity across the country." And he fired him. He said, "Get this idiot out of here." He was embraced by George Westinghouse. And of course, the world did go the way of alternating current. But Thomas Edison was also correct. All these three things come together now, because when you're talking about an electric car, the battery is DC. And then we use the AC with the AC induction motor. And then they're now going to replace the discovery of Anton Lucic, a Croatian, with the invention of Nikola Tesla, a Serbian who was born in Croatia, in Gospic. And all three of those things come together, even though it took 120 years to come to this point. The point I'm trying to illustrate, if there was someone like Nikola Tesla or Elon Musk 30 years ago, we would have had, I think, a totally different looking industry. Elon Musk, you can say what you want about Tesla, he embarrassed the incumbent automotive industry, because they used to tell us as consumers, it would take forever to make this transition. Cars are never going to be able to drive 400 or 500 kilometers. To build the infrastructure to charge these cars across America would take forever. Those are all wrong. He proved them wrong. And now I have a very good graphic on this, where I think this is a very fair demonstration of exactly what's going on right now. They are all pivoting to the electric vehicle. And you know, as a German, it's the most important industry, the automotive industry for Germany, and that the unions and making the auto parts and this expensive, many hundreds of billions of dollar transition is now happening. The pitfall I see is that the claims everyone's made, we're now starting to make the 2022 model year in August in Germany, and you will be able to buy these cars in October and November. I don't see how by 2028 or 2029, you're going to see 30% of vehicles electric. This is going to take more time, but it is coming. Maybe it takes till 2035, but what's going to happen, it really then goes to, say, 60 or 70% of all transportation is going to become electrified.
Okay, and you think it's the final solution, or is it just in-betweener?
No, it's absolutely the final solution, because you have many things that are going to happen at the same time. People are going to start driving less. I think this pandemic has now accelerated the ability for people to work from home. And you're going to see the one thing that government's always going to have, because people will say, well, hold on a second, there's a lot of tax in benzene and diesel. Who will pay for this roads? Who will pay for the bridges? It will be done with the car, with GPS. The more you drive, the more you're going to pay. And at the end of the day, you will pay the same as you pay now. I don't even think there will be any savings, because they will simply tax you, especially Germany with Brussels. They will tax you for the car, the amount the car moves. You will pay for the electricity, but it's the future. And no matter where you stand on this subject, imagine living in London City on a rainy day and your apartment has a bus of diesel driving by every 3 minutes. It's noise pollution, it's air pollution, and it's just a bygone era. The future will be electric, even if it's coal 100 kilometers outside of the city. It's still better in every single category. It's the future. People, they don't have to like it. They can curse, they can even disagree with what I say. But I'm an investor. I'm not going to get in the way of it. And I don't know the individual technology or the individual company, or if Tesla's overvalued, because it all runs through copper. The fortune will be made in copper until it's not. There will come a time to sell your copper shares too. Okay.
Yeah. Then we have to invite you as well. So what's your take on China? What happens if there's an economic slowdown in China, which is the largest consumer of copper?
Well, China is an exporter of these things. Yes, China is by far the largest consumer of copper. So I mentioned 25 million tons is the copper market. China is over 10 million tons of that, but they export a lot of that around the world in all the products that they make. So I've followed China for 30 years and really actively during this whole China super cycle. And they kind of did exactly what they said they were going to do. They said they were going to invest hundreds of trillions of dollars and remove hundreds of millions of people out of abject poverty. They did that. They even, 3 years ago, they finally have electricity in every single home in China. And if you look at the GDP growth or the PPP growth, purchasing power parity growth in China, it's been breathtaking. Now, before it used to grow by 10, 12, 13% per year. But now with a 14 or $15 trillion economy, it's growing by 6%. But the absolute number, it grows by $800 billion. There's been no economy in history that's grown like this. So to me, it's logical that the growth rate would slow down, but the absolute number keeps growing and growing. And so your question to me is, what would happen if we had a terrible economic outcome come out of China? And I would think that this is obviously short-term negative, but what we've seen with all of these economic calamities, particularly in the United States, that they correct themselves very quickly. America's going to have a problem down the road. They have to. They just have to. I don't understand how this doesn't get resolved, other than having some very tough quarters or a couple years to reset all of these things that you've talked about on your show and everyone else has talked about since 4 and 5 and 6 years. China's a little different. China's debt is mostly internal. It's like Japan. It's not owed to other people, where America's debt is owed to other people. And they still they want to be the leader in all these different technologies. So what they do when they stimulate their economy, they're stimulating their economy for the future. They're stimulating their economy with this Belt and Road initiative, which is connecting another 50 countries to China. yes, maybe it's happening a little bit of a clumsy way, but this investment still must happen. So when they pull the card of stimulating with $1 or $2 or $3 trillion, it's not like they do in America where everyone gets a check in the mail and they go to Walmart and buy stupid things made in China. No, China says we will build another 10,000 kilometer of infrastructure power. We will build 500,000 of charging points. We will build 10,000 kilometer of highway because we will make increased productivity between certain regions. So I think China has the ability to do this at least for 10 more years or more, or in the context of what I'm talking about. And these things we know are going to be heavily geared towards copper. They've told us in the 14th five-year plan of China, they've now come out and says it's not 2030, it's going to be 2025, where because of this massive continued investment, their emissions and the pollution levels counted in Chinese cities is going to go like this.
Okay.
And it's going to continue to go like this. And it's only possible by them being the world leader in wind, solar, transportation, integration, battery management systems. Who's the leader in every category here in green energy other than Tesla? It's the Chinese. All. I mean, every single category. I don't see them saying we want to become second place. For the next decade, they will continue to be the leader in all these fields, and copper is a big input to that.
Okay. Okay. So let's finish up here with some tips for the retail investors. You're one of the most experienced and successful copper mining investors. So what are you actually looking at when you pick a stock, when you pick a mining stock? So what's important to watch?
Well, first of all, for us there was three criteria. Did the projects we're looking at, it's extremely risky business. Yeah. So has a lot of money been spent on a project? That's important because, we need to know roughly what is here going on. Okay, we accept there's no perfect project, but does it have all the other attributes? Number two, are we able to send our children to work at the project? That's our risk tolerance.
Okay.
If we can't do that, we're not going there. And three, the most important one, Mark, is a company larger than mine, with my network, when the market normalizes, would they actually buy the project from me? That's extremely important. If you can't monetize what you own, it's wasting time. And so we feel the projects that we've looked at and the projects that we own have all these criteria. And that now that the interest is at a high level, because you have to look at, if you're a larger company and your board of directors, which is accountants and lawyers and successful business people in America, in London, or in Australia, these are very risk-adverse people. So when you were last year with copper at a very low price, at an almost all-time low inflation-adjusted price, this board of directors gave very little latitude to the management team and the technical team to go buy other projects. The copper price did well in the first quarter and it's strong now. And now we all look at the prospects for green energy, which I believed in since 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
Now have a lot of confidence. Can you imagine what the board of directors meeting looked like in the first quarter? The lawyers and the accountants and the business people are saying, you know what? We have a great business, but if we can't show growth to the market, we are going to get punished. Then the last quarter in April or May, they're saying, guys, the technical team needs to go out there, get on the ground and give us growth. Find us projects that have size that we can put into our portfolio and we can slowly convert them to a reserve. Now it's coming on August. And I'm here to tell you that the board of directors meetings that happen now and in the next, you're going to start to see a lot of activity in M&A. The interest is there. I can tell you from what I own, people knocking on my door and wanting to go see what I own. There's almost a mania in that part of it. This will translate into liquidity into the industry where people will make these disproportionate benefits. So this is just the starting point. It's still early, but this gives confidence to the market and you're going to start seeing this. So I think the good news is that for the timing of this show, price of copper pretty healthy. But the mania has not happened. And if you look at the inflation adjusted price, because you look at that chart I have, and it's important to look at these things. The last time, you would say, the last time copper was here, but what was the value of US dollar in 2008 or 2011? A lot more. They keep devaluing. So I will submit to you, copper has to go to these prices I'm talking about just to be in the same dollar adjusted average. And that's why you're going to continue to see this price inflation in copper and overwhelming demand. The only reason, Mark, copper prices go high is because we're literally running out. Nobody in the world wants to pay a lot for commodity prices. They only do this because they're scrambling. And in Shanghai, you looked at the warehouse levels. I did a Twitter post 3 days ago. They're running out. There's no copper in the Shanghai warehouses. There's no copper in COMEX. There's no copper in LME. So you can play that game for a while. You know, here's a saying in commodities: running out of a commodity doesn't matter until it matters. And then it matters a lot. And then it becomes really important. You can only play that game for so long.
Yeah, exciting time. So beside Copper Bank, what are your other 3 hottest stock picks in the copper market?
I think I like Lundin Mining. It's a bigger company. I know a lot of the people involved with that company. They've got great assets. They can grow. And I think the share price can continue to trend higher. And I always caution people if you want to play in copper, you have to be liquid and you have to have some diversification. So everyone should own, at the margin, Freeport-McMoRan. It's the world's largest copper mining company that's listed. Delco, the world's largest. Listed ones that you and I can buy, it's Freeport-McMoRan. So you want to look at it when it dips, a little bit of negative sentiment in the market, and that's when you want to take allocations to these things, or just buy it every 2-3 months, slowly, because I think Freeport's going to have a very good 5 or 6 years. It's a good holding. And you know what? If you change your mind, you can sell it in 1 second and you're gone. Go do something else. But you're not going to make 10 times your money. To make 5 or 10 times your money, you need to be with a land optionality play like Copper Bank. And we are a little different than the other juniors. It's a very dangerous sector. We are the largest shareholders. We hate dilution. We never do financings with warrants. We've always done these financings above the market. We write our own check. And of course, most importantly, I don't want to build a copper mine. I'm looking to sell. I'm highly motivated to monetize my share position. So if you're part of our group, we're kind of in it with investors, not looking at big salaries. So we can, just look at our track record. And I think if you do any kind of internet due diligence, you can see a lot about us. And I think that's a good 1, 2, 3 in copper: Freeport, Lundin, and Copper Bank, if you're really looking for torque or
Perfect. So for the end, I would like to make some rapid fire questions. What do you think after the copper mania, when this cycle is over, what will be the next mega trend?
I can't answer that today, but the carbon credits is interesting.
Okay.
This is something everyone's talking about now. The danger there, it has the fingerprints of government all over. Government can change the value of a credit, make it better for someone, worse for someone. I don't like that. The rules can change one day to the next on this, and it's fictitious. It's not like copper where you actually run out and they must have it. Silver we don't must have. There's some use for industrial purposes. Gold we don't need this thing. And for a lot of people now, they have other alternatives for their comfort. Maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong, but your life doesn't change. Industry's life doesn't change without these things. And then if you go around the bases, of course, I talked about oil. It's like tobacco. It's going to be good for some people, and it's going to be a good margin. And I think the volatility in oil is what you play. When it becomes very negative, you get back into it. And when it becomes healthy, you get out of it. But you talk about uranium, or you could talk about any other commodity you want. I mean, I think that people need to, look at them very carefully.
Yeah. Okay. So you've got any thoughts on Bitcoin?
Well, Bitcoin is like these other things. And all these debates I've seen and people have asked, no one ever asked this question. So let me ask you, Mark. Our government and the government in the European says, you know what? Bitcoin is illegal. We're going to leave it at 1,000 of Bitcoin. If you have it, you have it. But of course, no one's going to turn it in voluntarily. Of course not, right? Like gold, when they made gold illegal to own, no one went lined up at the bank and says, here, I must give you my gold. But that's going to compress it. It makes it, I think, if you cannot transact in it, or if you're holding it, I don't know what happens if governments collectively start to make it more and more free. I don't know. The price was down, not up. I'm just, and then of course, the authentication theory, where Bitcoin 2.0 can come now, or Bitcoin 3.0, a little bit more sophisticated. They learn people's wallets aren't going to get lost. They can maybe make more coins or whatever. What happens when more of these sophisticated future governmental tokens, or if that's the way they go, what if they start getting adoption? So I don't like to invest in things or speculate in things that one day to the next you could wake up and the price collapses. What happens over the weekend if China or governments were to do? I don't know the answer to that. And for that reason, people can have it as a part of their portfolio. Fine. Is Bitcoin going to $1 million a Bitcoin? God bless them. Throw a party. I'll come. I'll have some drinks. But without me, I won't be part of it.
Yeah.
But to have one or two, or if you have the portfolio for it,
yeah,
sure. To own no Bitcoin, if you have a portfolio big enough, perhaps.
Okay.
But I think there's ways that you can avoid it too. So arguments both ways.
Good. So what was the most important book you've ever read?
The most important book I've ever read. I would say it's not really a book, but it's if you look at it collectively, if you read Ray Dalio and his notes, like a book, his principles, I think if you were to invest 20 hours of your life in an archive, those are genius. And for the last cycle, that is hard archive of what's called Basic Points by Don Cox. Yeah. He wrote this series from about early 2000 till about 2013, 2014 through the China super cycle. And that was poetry and history. Okay. Cool. And it's fantastic. But to me, that's that. And I've always read Ray Dalio. Whenever I see something by him, you set aside for Saturday, you get your coffee, and you read it and you enjoy it. And often you'll read it twice because I think he's really good at explaining these things. Coincidentally, his explanation on Bitcoin was very good. Yeah. And I can see that it was brilliant. He also asked some of these matter-of-fact questions.
But he also bought Bitcoin because he said it's better than owning treasuries or bonds. But you wrote a book as well, and there's even a German translation available, and I read it. I think it's worth reading it. So I will definitely put a link beneath the video. So my last question, Gianni, has nothing to do with copper or commodities or with money. It's something totally different. So what is for you the meaning of life?
That's a great question. And I'm 46 years old now. I've traveled the world. I've had some successes, some failures. I've had some successes. And I haven't had a real job, Mark, in 15 years. And I've seen some of my friends very well. You know, they have seemingly everything. And Ron Williams commits suicide. Why? Wow. And I think there's two things that's the secret to life for everyone. You have to remain curious. Curiosity is so important for people. To have something new to look forward to have something new that you don't know. And with that, the second part of it is variety. Yeah. Curiosity and variety are the magic potion to life. And for me, I try to follow that. I don't have to have certain things, nothing to prove to anyone. And I think right now, especially with this pandemic, I used to travel over 100,000 miles a year flying. Now I did that mostly for adventure and to see the world, but I've seen the world. And now what the pandemic has showed me, and I know what I don't, of Croatia to Florence, Zurich, Munich, that's my square. Okay. If I spend the rest of my life in this square, I will be very happy. And it's great. The variety that I have here, I don't need to fly. And I'm very happy to be Croatian and Canadian Croatian. And I think those are the two most important things, and I think people can relate to that. Curiosity, stay curious.
Cool. Gianni, it was a pleasure talking to you. I think the audience liked it as well. And please put your comments under the video, share it, give us a thumb up. And we would like to talk to you again, definitely. It was definitely great having you on my show. Thank you very much for your time and that we could pick your brain on copper and commodities.
You're very kind, Mark, and have a great summer.
You too.